are an effect that certain stats have if you put more than one module that affect that stat. The modules are sorted from most effective to least effective, and then as you go past the first module, each module is less and less effective than the number it would normally produce as a bonus in that category. So, for example, if you have multiple gyrostabilizers on a ship with projectile weapons, the rate of fire bonus of 10 for example, the gyrostabilizer 2 has a 10.5% rate of fire bonus. The second gyrostabilizer 2 would have less of a bonus, the third one even less, and so on, until they are very low bonus. One moment. Alright, so this is off the E-UNI wiki. The first mod is 100% effective. The second mod is 86 or 87% effective. The third mod is a little over 50% effective. The fourth mod is a little over 25% effective. The fifth mod a little over 10%. It's about 100, 85, 50, 25, 10, and 3 for the sixth. So as you can see, as you stack more and more modules onto a ship, the modules become very ineffective after a time. Now, there are only certain modules, or a set of... Okay. All bonuses and penalties are calculated by stat, not by module. So, if you have a module that affects both ship velocity and ship agility, for example, the nanofiber internal structure, and then you had a mod that affected the ship's speed as well, like the overdrive injector, you would have the full bonus from the overdrive injector, and then the nanofiber internal structure's ship speed bonus would be stacking penalized. Should mean it would be about 85% effective. However, the nanofiber internal structure's agility bonus would be 100% effective because there are no other mods that are more effective than it before. This can affect things like the gyrostabilizer, as my example, or my first example, is a 10.5 rate of fire bonus. You can get a rig, a Tech 2 projectile weapon rig, that provides a 15% rate of fire bonus, which would be calculated before the gyrostabilizers, which would mean you would get the full extra 5% from that rig over the first gyrostabilizer before any stacking penalties are applied. And you would not lose any of the damage bonus from the gyrostabilizer. So I made a not quite complete list of stats which are affected by stacking penalties. The first and foremost is ship speed and agility. Overdrive injectors, nanofiber, the inertial stabilizers, along with the astronautics rigs such as low friction nozzle joints, polycarbon engine housing, and auxiliary thrusters, are all stacking penalized with each other. Similarly, the penalty from armor rigs is stacking penalized. So if you have a negative speed bonus from 3 armor rigs, it's stacking penalized with itself. Now, it is key to note that if you are webified by an enemy ship, or you are using a stasis webifier on an enemy ship, the stasis webifier is not stacking penalized, which means that a single 50% speed penalty to an enemy ship reduces their speed by 50%. 2 50% webs will reduce it by 25%, or down to 25% speed. Weapon optimal, range, fall off, tracking, and damage are all stacking penalized including rigs, low slot modules like gyro stabilizers and tracking enhancers, medium slot modules like tracking computers, and remote modules such as the remote tracking links are all stacking penalized with each other. Enemy tracking disruptors are penalized separately. So the most effective tracking disruptor isn't stacking penalized with your own tracking bonuses. But if they use many of them on you, their effectiveness starts to drop off as the stacking penalties add up. Sensor range and resolution, similar to the weapon ranges. All bonuses you have to sensor range or resolution are stacking penalized. This is from local modules, rigs, and also remote bonuses. Similar to the tracking, the penalties from remote sensor dampeners are also stacking penalized separately. Your ship's signature radius is stacking penalized. This is kind of an interesting one because there are 3 mods I know of that you can put on your ship that increase your signature radius. Although I should note that actually there are 4, sort of. The microwarp drive gives you a 500% bonus or so, which can be really nasty for some ships. As well as shield rigs increase your signature radius. Inertial stabilizers, the low slot modules that add ship agility, increase signature radius. And also T2 high damage missiles, and I believe some of the other T2 ammos as well, increase your signature radius. And these all stacking penalize with each other. And since enemy target painters increase your sig radius, they are also stacking penalized along with all of these other effects. ECM jamming bonuses and ECM range bonuses, kind of similar to the weapon optimal fall off and damage bonuses. These are like the ECM bonus low slot items. The signal disruptors, I believe they're called. There are some other modules which are stacking penalized. Most of them, shield resistances and armor resistances. Those are the other key ones. They are stacking penalized. And I'll talk a little bit about calculating shield and armor resistances later on in this class. So are there any questions about those modules or those stats? Or anything else that I've covered so far? Alright, well let me continue then. The modules, or the stats that are not affected, notably, by stacking penalties, some are pretty obvious. If you put 2 guns on your ship, you're going to have twice as effective as 1 gun. Guns themselves aren't stacking penalized with each other. But interestingly, the damage control module, none of its stats are stacking penalized. It doesn't take up the first slot either, so the first mod that gives a shield or armor resistances even is the first mod that gets 100%. The damage control is not part of that calculation, will give its full bonus all the time. Stasis webifiers, which I covered earlier, are not stacking penalized. 250% webs is the equivalent of 75% web. Shield, armor, and structure HP. Whether this comes from like the power diagnostic system, which gives you percentage shield HP, or core defense field extenders, which give you percentage HP, or large, small, medium shield extenders, which give you a fixed amount of HP. Similarly with armor and the armor rigs and the low slot modules, none of those are stacking penalized with each other. Note that the speed penalty from the armor rigs is stacking penalized though. Also, shield and capacitor regeneration rates are not stacking penalized. You can get very high capacitor regen by stacking many capacitor cap rechargers and capacitor power relays and stuff like that on your ship. And people tend to do that a lot if they need capacitor regen. Some of the sources of bonuses that are not stacking penalized. Any skills you have will not be affected by stacking penalties. You always get the full bonus from your skill in the first module. You'll also get any ship bonuses, like the Tempest's large projectile turret rate of fire bonus is always calculated in its entirety. Another thing to note is that shield boost amplifiers are penalized, but the shield boosters themselves are not. So if you put one shield boost amplifier and one shield booster on, you will get full effect from both of them. Two shield boost amplifiers, the second one is going to be, shield boost amplifier is going to be less effective, but one shield boost amplifier and two boosters will have their full effectiveness. So are there any questions about those stats or those modules before I get into the actual calculations here? Implants are not stacking penalized. You always get the full effect of the implants as well. Similarly with boosters, for example, the blue pill is it increases your shield boost amount, and it works fine with shield boost amplifiers without reducing any effectiveness. Alright, so let me go ahead and cover some of the, kind of go over how the game calculates these. So my example is going to be the Sensor Booster 2. I went ahead and linked it in class.E-UNI if you guys don't know the stats. The stats are 30% scan resolution bonus and 30% max targeting range bonus. It can be used with Sensor Booster scripts, which will remove one of the bonuses and double the other bonus. So this is a pretty standard module, and some ships like sniping ships or ECM ships may have more than one of them in order to get targets in range, lock targets faster, things like that. So if you have one of these modules without any scripts on it on your ship, and you have a 100-kilometer base locking range, you, with skills, let's say, with the sensor booster turned off, your locking range is exactly 100 kilometers. When you turn this sensor booster on, your locking range will go up to 130 kilometers because it produces a 1.3x multiplier to your locking range. Now, if you had a second one of these sensor boosters as well, you would get, without stacking penalties, you would have a 100-kilometer locking range times the 1.3x targeting range bonus times another 1.3x targeting bonus. And that would result in 169,000 meters, or 169 kilometers. Because of stacking penalties, the second sensor booster is only going to be 86.9% effective. So in actuality, it's 100 kilometers times the 1.3x multiplier of the first sensor booster, and then the second sensor booster's 1.3x bonus is multiplied by the stacking penalty of 0.869. Sorry, I said this wrong. The second sensor booster is 1 plus a 30% bonus. So it's 1 plus 0.3 times the 0.869 bonus. Or, sorry, the 0.869 penalty. So if you multiply 0.3 by the 0.869, it results in 0.2607, or about 0.26. If you add that 0.26 to the 1, you get 1.26, or a 26% bonus from the second sensor booster. So you have the 100 kilometer range times the 1.3 of the first sensor booster times the 1.26% or 1.26 bonus from the second sensor booster results in 163.8 kilometer locking range. So it should be noted here that the total bonus from the two sensor boosters winds up being a 63.8% bonus, as reduced from a 169% bonus without stacking penalties. This bonus is still higher than twice what one sensor booster would provide, because all stats in EVE Online with percentage bonuses are multiplied together. So if you add a third sensor booster to the mix, you get the 163.8 kilometer locking range times 1 plus the 0.3 bonus times the 57.1 percent, just like this. So you end up with 100. You end up with. Wait, that didn't work right. Sorry, I'm trying to do these calculations as I go. I need to have them all written down if I do this class again. Sorry about this. And the grand total is 191.9 kilometers, approximately. And this bonus is still about as effective as 3 sensor boosters if they were added together. So as you can see, stacking penalties do affect the effectiveness of modules, but because they're multiplied together like this, you still increase the effectiveness quite substantially. As we add more sensor boosters, the effectiveness drops off quite a bit from this point. I think the next is like 205 kilometers or so, and then the next one will only be about 3% over that, or another 5 or 10 kilometers. Now, one thing to note is that sensor boosters can be scripted. We calculated the bonus for targeting range with 2 unscripted sensor boosters. With 2 scripted sensor boosters, you get exactly double, or 1.6 times the 100. 100 times 1.6 for your tracking range. If you had 2 scripted sensor boosters, they were each scripted to the different stat. So you had one scripted for range and one scripted for scan resolution. You would actually get less total for both scan resolution and range, because you'd have 100 times 1.6 instead of 100 times 1.3 times 1.3 stacking penalized. Or 160 kilometers instead of 163.8. Now, shield resistances, or armor resistances. This is something that took me a while to figure out exactly, because you aren't just getting stacking penalties, but you're also filling the remaining hole with each multiple. So in a way, I like to invert the numbers when working with shield resistances. So I like to consider a 1 being a resist that's at 0%. 0.5 would be a resist that is at 50%, and 0.8 would be a resist at 20%. More or less, 0.8 would be 80% of the damage is passing through to your ship. So if you're flying a T1 ship and you're looking at your thermal damage resistance, you have 0.8. If you were to put a single invulnerability field on, let's say the invulnerability field 2, that provides a 30% bonus. So if you invert that as well, you get 0.7. So your total thermal resistance for thermal would be 0.8 times 0.7. Or rather, your total thermal vulnerability would be 0.8 times 0.7, which would be 0.56, or 44% thermal resistance. Now, shield resistances and armor resistances are stacking penalized. So each one of the additional module, for example, if we had 2 invulnerability fields, this would be a 0.8 resistance times the 0.7 resistance for the first invulnerability field, and then multiplied by the stacking penalized 0.7% resistance. Except we need to stacking penalize it for its damage resistance bonus. So the 30%, or the 0.3 that we took out of the 0.7, needs to be multiplied by the stacking penalty of 0.869. So it becomes 1 minus 0.3 times 869, which results in total damage vulnerability of 0.414%, or 0.414, or 41.4%. If you invert that to get your resistance, you'd have 58.6 or 59%, 58 or 59 on the fitting screen. Are there any questions about this, these calculations here? I know I might have lost a few people because some people don't much like math, but are you guys following this? Alright, I hope so. Alright. That's good to know. So I hope, you don't necessarily need to know these all that by heart. EFT and stuff like that, they'll let you do these calculations automatically by just sticking modules on the ship. And that's a great thing about those programs. But kind of understanding what's going on behind it, knowing that not only is that an invulnerability field is always going to reduce incoming damage from a category by a certain amount. And that's, the resistances don't go up the same way that you may initially expect them to. This is actually similar to the calculation for penalties, penalties, including penalties like refire rate. In fact, the things like the ballistic control system, it has a rate of fire bonus of 10.5%. That means 10.5% more missiles will go out in, say, a 100-second period than before, which means you actually have to do some reverse calculation to figure out exactly how much that rate of fire bonus will reduce the cycle time on your weapons. Basically, it'd be X times 10 point or 0.105 will be equal to 1. Sorry, x times 1.105 is equal to 1. And then you solve for x by basically dividing 1 by 1.105, which results in a reduction in the cycle time by 90.5%, or sorry, 9.5%. Somebody asked, how do SIBO scripts or tracking computer scripts, will the penalties apply to the scripts? The penalties don't apply to the scripts. They apply to the resulting module after it's been scripted. The scripts actually change the stats of the module itself. So a sensor booster with a script in it will have, with a targeting range script, will have a 60% bonus to range. If you have two sensor boosters, one scripted for targeting range and one not, it would mean you'd have the 60% bonus from the scripted sensor booster and the 30% bonus from the unscripted one with stacking penalties applied. Now, again, like I said earlier, the unscripted sensor booster, while it's it will have a stacking penalty for targeting range. If you have no other modules that affect scan resolution, you'll get the full 30% bonus to scan resolution from that unscripted sensor booster. But it won't have the full 30% bonus to targeting range because you do have another module that affects targeting range calculated in front of it. I also want to point out that skills multiply with all of these calculations. So if you have long-range targeting at level 0 and you were getting the 100 kilometer range, then you put a sensor booster on it, you get 130 kilometers. If you train long-range targeting and you get your targeting range up by 5%, you'll have 105 kilometer targeting range. If you put a sensor booster on after that, you have the sensor booster multiplies the targeting range after being multiplied by your skill. So you have 105 kilometers times the 1.3%. Sorry, 1.3 times x. And that would result in 136.5 kilometers, or with the sensor booster, your skill is effectively giving you 6.5 kilometer sensor range, rather than the 5 kilometers it was giving you without the sensor booster. So in a way, skills help substantially when you have high bonuses in that category. Now, in reverse, I want to note that, let's take ship agility, for example. Ship agility reduces the inertia modifier of your ship by a certain percentage. The low friction nozzle joints 1 rig has a minus 11.7% reduction in ship minus 11.7% penalty to your ship agility. So if your ship has a 0.5 agility, which I think is around what a destroyer may have, you would multiply it by 1 minus the 0.117 penalty, which would result in an effective agility of 0.4415. If you don't know what the inertial modifier actually does, Your mass times your inertial modifier produces a number which basically tells you how fast, exactly how fast, your ship will accelerate from 0 to max velocity or reduce speed. So reducing your inertial modifier, making that number go down, this is under navigation in the fitting screen. Making that number go down reduces the effective mass of your ship for agility calculations. If you have the skill, however, of evasive maneuvers, it also reduces your ship inertia modifier. So if the ship originally had a 0.5 bonus to, or a 0.5 inertial modifier, you would multiply it by the 0.0, multiply it by 1 minus your skills bonus, or in this case it would be 0.95 if you had one level, and then it would be multiplied by the 0.883 multiplier for the rig. And if the rig would have a less effective, less total effect on the inertia modifier, even though it still has the same percentage effect on the inertia modifier. In the end, however, this all kind of works out to be even. What it does mean, though, is that the bonuses being multiplied together is worse for you when they're penalties, such as agility and some other reductions, and better for you when they're bonuses, such as damage multipliers, speed multipliers, scan range multipliers, things like that. Anyway, are there any last questions? I don't want to go too long on this class. I think I covered most of it, and I hope folks learned something. So, are there any last questions here? All right. Well, thanks for joining me, and let me know if you like this or not, because I'm not sure how well this class works or whatever. So, all right. Well, that's it. That's pretty much all I had to talk about. I did promise in the thing it'll be shorter than an hour, and I hope that worked out for you guys.